Okay, I'll start with the high-capacity transit plan, and I feel like we don't do this enough, frankly, because as I was working through as the council lead on the high-capacity transit plan, it became very clear that the role you play overseeing our transit system is so essential to this making the greatest place piece. And before I go on, I really want to compliment Fred, and I really want to compliment you on keeping Fred, because Fred is such an important player at the regional table on transportation planning. He keeps people focused on, it's not just lines on a map, it's not just buses, it's about linking communities. And that was really the emphasis of the high capacity transit plan. This is really the first time the region has planned out what we do with light rail, with bus rapid transit, with fast streetcars from a regional perspective. We kind of started this process in 1982, I think, and put kind of compass lines on a map and said it makes sense to go east, west, north, south, and built the lines as it became clear that we had ridership. This is the first time we've stood back and said, well, where does it really make sense to build our communities? And then how do we use transit as the tool to link those communities? And what does that really mean? I mean, we really took a very different look at transit and the role of transit. And what we came out with were a series of lines still, but they're prioritized based primarily on data. What do we think the ridership's going to be? What are the environmental impacts? They came out in a list of kind of data-based priorities. The big piece, I think, of the high-capacity transit plan that a lot of people missed, and it's the piece we'll be living, frankly, is the system expansion policy. We didn't just say, okay, so here's the fixed list of what lines we're going to build next. What we said was, before we build anything, let's look at a policy for why do we expand, why do we take a line in a certain place, and what are the things that local communities can do to move themselves up or down on that line, and on that priority list. And there are things like, what's the readiness of your community? Where do you think your stations would be, and what's the best way to use those stations? So we're really looking at the transit piece as a community hub, we use node, I'm transitioning over to hub, where we might look at a transit station more in terms of things like, should we have maybe a satellite campus there? Maybe we should look at having community services at transit stations. Maybe we should look at making sure that we have, if not low income or affordable or senior housing right at the transit station, pretty accessible. And then what are the buses that feed that transit station? So it's a very different way, I think, of looking at high-capacity transit in the region. And it's why I think your working with us in the future as partners is going to be so critical, because each community that we begin to think with and work with is going to have a sense of, okay, what's the transit component? What's the sort of what I think of as the big transit, the light rail? What are the feeder transit pieces? What are the other community pieces? And it really is going to require partnering, and Metro really looks forward to working with you, and I know our local governments, clearly Gresham and other local governments, work with you on each of their lines. So this is a very important partnership. The other piece I just wanted to mention is the other large part of making the greatest place is the regional transportation plan, and TriMet had a couple of comments on our performance targets on this plan. The plan is, as you know, it's huge. It's all about how do we, between now and 2035, invest the limited funds we have as a region in all kinds of transportation projects, not just light rail or streetcars or buses are really a small part of it, but roads, bridges, how do we prioritize those? And I'm assuming this was your staff came up with a couple of recommendations for performance targets, and I want to really thank you for this, because once again you have raised the bar. One of the performance targets, and this is an outcomes-based plan. It's the first time we've done an outcomes-based plan where we say, here's what we want the region to live like. We want people to have employment. We want people to be able to walk to our communities. So what are the projects that it's going to take to get us there? And for example, one of our objectives was about demand management, and it read, implement services, incentives, and supportive infrastructure to increase awareness of travel options. Well, your staff came back and said to dramatically increase walking, biking, taking transit and carpooling. I mean, that's the kind of really specific, smart information we need, and we're honing these targets down. It's the first time, again, that we've done performance targets. So getting that kind of feedback. There was one on consider and selectively promote, as appropriate, a broader application of value pricing and yada, 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 you know? And your staff came back and said, promote a broader application of pricing as a management tool. And that's the kind of, again, direction and really clear, focused, raising the bar. Don't just talk about it. Don't just mealy-mouth around it. Let's get there. And I really appreciate your staff. I appreciate you. I think that we have an opportunity here to achieve some huge goals that we cannot, frankly, we cannot miss targets. And right now, the RTP doesn't get us to those targets. We appreciate that you're forcing us to raise the bar higher and to try to get there.
Thanks, Carlotta.